Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who have been following along for a while, today is going to be our first eat video. For those of you who are new and maybe haven't watched some of the previous videos, my name is Corey. I'm 22 and this channel is all about going through your 20s and figuring out that it's not as easy as everybody makes it seem like it's going to be. So we're kicking off this series called Eat, Pray, Love. It's based off of Elizabeth Gilbert's book, obviously, Eat, Pray, Love. And the reason why I decided to structure this series this way is because I love not only the title of Eat, Pray, Love, but also the way that that book was structured, because I think that the three kind of fundamentals of a happy life make up the physical, so that's represented by eat, and then the spiritual and mental aspect of things, which is obviously pray, and then love, which is all about whether that's self-love, whether that's creating healthy relationships in your life, whatever that is. Love is such an important aspect in our lives. So I'm doing a video series where each video is based off of one of those three things. So today we're going to kick things off with an eat video because I wasn't feeling original, so I figured we would just go in chronological order. But anyway, I've been using the hashtag vegan-in-training on social media. I'll link to my profiles below if you want to follow along with some of that story. There have been some pretty hilarious tweets that have come out of my attempts at going vegan, because it has not been as easy of a transition as I thought that it was going to be. I've also been Instagramming some of the things that I've been eating just to kind of talk about. It's so simple right now just because I have no idea how to cook when it comes to being vegan. So I've been doing a lot of research and watching a lot of other awesome YouTubers who have been doing this for a lot longer than I have, who've made some great vegan cooking videos, so more to come on that. We'll definitely actually talk about like cooking when you're vegan, but I've been doing a lot of just really simple ingredients, and I also haven't been fully vegan yet because I had a lot of products in my house that were animal-based products that I didn't want to waste because I'd already purchased them when I made the decision to go vegan. So I've been a vegan in training for the past maybe week and a half. But this week I think will mark the first week of grocery shopping where I'm not buying any animal products. So it's been interesting so far, and today is Sunday, which is the day that we have a really cute farmer's market over in the East Bay, so I decided to head over there and get some stuff for this week. And I feel like one of the big issues that comes up a lot of times when it comes to talking about being vegan or eating healthier is the cost of healthier food, and I totally agree that there are a lot of issues in terms of the production costs of super processed foods being so low because the quality is so terrible that it makes a bag of Cheetos cheaper than like a box of organic raspberries, which is a problem, obviously. But I'm going to try to also talk about like what I'm spending on groceries, partially just so I can keep track, just because this is a big change in my diet and my lifestyle, so I want to kind of be aware of the way that that's affecting how much I'm spending on food, but I also just want to be conscious and kind of have a conversation about why it is that maybe healthier food is a lot more expensive than these processed foods that we eat in the store. So anyway, we'll talk about that. So I'm just going to go through my bag of goodies really quick that I got and talk about, first of all, also for those of you who haven't watched previous videos, I recently just got out of a long-term relationship. So I realized the other day that I have no idea how to buy food for just one person, because even in college, I really loved to cook for like all of my roommates, and a lot of times there would be like shared snacks in the house and things like that. And then as soon as I left college, I was living with someone who I was also cooking for, and even though we were splitting groceries every week, but I was always buying groceries for two people and not just me. So last week I did like a mini grocery trip for me and wound up with so much food, and I wasted a lot of it, which I felt bad about, but I genuinely had way too much food. So I limited myself this week. I got $40 of cash out from the bank and was like, okay, I can't spend any more than this on groceries for the week. And if I run out of food, great, I can go get more, but I just didn't want to fill my fridge so full that I couldn't eat everything again. So I didn't spend the full $40, by the way, so I'm not going to do the exact math of how much I spent for you because that would be embarrassing because I'm so bad at math, but all of this was for less than $40. I have $12 left over. So if you want to do the math on that, that's great. Anyway, so I got some carrots. I'm really trying to diversify because one of my go-tos when it comes to eating like healthy food is to just eat a lot of fruit, which fruit is bad. I'm not trying to hate on fruit, but it's also so high in sugar. And I have a really big sweet tooth, and so that's the way that I combat a lot of those cravings when I want like ice cream or candy is I'll eat fruit, but then I think I kind of overeat fruit. But I gave myself a pass because I told myself as long as I switch to fruit this week and not Skittles, then that's allowed. I got this awesome mix of salad. This is salad greens. There's some arugula and some lettuce in there. It was not very descriptive, I know. But I do know what this is. This is spinach. And again, I have a really big issue is one of my biggest pet peeves of buying salad at grocery stores is that it's usually like wet already when you buy like the bagged lettuce because they don't like want you to have to wash it, but then it gets moldy within like a few days even being in the refrigerator because it's just sitting in water and it's so gross. So anyway, I'm excited for this. None of this is like washed. It's all just, I actually like the fact that it's like gritty and dirty because I can tell that somebody just like picked it out of the ground and put it in this bag, and I'm so excited. Probably one of the smartest marketing ploys at farmers markets is when they hold up their produce to let you try it. So this guy was standing with slices of these Fuji apples, and they were so good. Which, being from Oregon, most of the time our local apples, are not that sweet except for during the fall when the trees are really producing the big sweet kinds of apples, and the rest of the year you can get kind of like smaller, more bitter apples, but here in California, like, this is amazing. You get like sweet, delicious apples year round. I don't think I've ever been to the farmer's market and not seen them have apples, which is crazy. But so I got 3 Fuji apples. Again, I'm trying to limit how much fruit that I'm eating, so I tried to buy a good ratio of veggies and fruit so that that'll help me. I also got, it's heavy, excuse my lean, but I got a delicious little cucumber and then also cauliflower to make cauliflower rice. I'll do a whole recipe on my favorite cauliflower rice bowl because it's literally the best thing ever. I remember the first time I saw cauliflower rice on Pinterest, I was like, what? Like, really, like, rice is not that bad, you guys. Like, we don't have to use a vegetable to make rice. But then there was one night where I didn't have rice and I basically only had things to make like a bowl, but I did have cauliflower, and so I was like, okay, I'll try it. So I made cauliflower rice, and it's actually better than, I think it's better than just like brown rice or jasmine rice because it's super absorbent because it's a vegetable, and so it takes on a lot more flavor, but it doesn't have, cauliflower to me doesn't have a strong flavor in and of itself, so it doesn't overpower the other flavors that are in the bowl. And when you fry it in the frying pan, I like toast it with a little bit of olive oil, and it's so good. So I'll do a whole recipe video on that, but this head of cauliflower is ginormous. It's literally the size of my face, so I'm really excited. And then finally, I got a whole carton of berries, which I'm going to take these out so you can see them. Oh. Yum! This is probably one of my favorite parts of living in California are the berries. They're so bomb. So bomb. And I was talking to the guy at the stand today, and I was asking him, because I've been buying berries from him since, I don't even know, I think since back in like June he started coming to the farmer's market, and I was like, how long does berry season go here? And I guess that he grows them until like November. He said he can grow them until November here outside of the package, and then they actually have like plastic tunnels that they put over the fruit so they can grow it longer. So I'm like dropping berries on the ground. Sorry, not sorry. But I thought that was incredible because, again, it's just like the magic of being in a place that doesn't really have seasons, because in Oregon you probably get like really good juicy berries for like 2 months, and then the bushes are pretty much done. So it's pretty cool to go. And also, I should have taken a picture. I will next time, but it's really interesting. The berry stand that I go to has two sides. So it has one side where you can buy sprayed berries that have been sprayed with all the pesticides and things like that, and they're cheaper than the ones that have not been sprayed. And it's interesting to look because the sprayed berries are always larger and they're cheaper because they're easier to grow, I guess, or, you know, it takes less resources to keep the bugs off of them, or whatever, and they're bigger. But the non-sprayed ones are always smaller, and I actually did a taste test one week. I got a basket of sprayed strawberries, I got a basket of non-sprayed strawberries, and this could have been psychosomatic, don't get me wrong, I understand, but to me, there definitely was a taste difference. Like, the bigger berries seemed more bland than the smaller berries, and it just, like, I don't know, like, there wasn't that same feeling of, like, I feel like a lot of times when you're eating, like, really fresh produce, it's kind of like you get that, like, sensory overload of, like, it tastes really good, and, like, you just feel good when you're eating it, and I didn't really get that as much from the sprayed berries. Last goodie on the list is I got pomegranate juice, and I got a full quart this time. I normally just get a little baby pint of it, but I drink so much of it that I got a full thing. This is one of my favorite things to put in smoothies, actually, because I really like smoothies that I can just like put in a cup and take on my way to work. So I like them to be kind of more juice than they are smoothies, so that they're easy to drink. So I put a lot of pomegranate juice in, and to be totally honest, when I drink a lot of pomegranate juice, I like notice that I get sick less often. Pomegranate juice is supposed to be this pomegranates are supposed to be this wonder food where they're full of antioxidants. They're so good for you, which is awesome. But to be totally honest, I drink pomegranate juice just because I think it's delicious. So that's me. So anyway, that was my haul today from the farmer's market, and like I said, I got all of that for under $40, and for me, this is probably enough food for, I don't want to, maybe not a full week, but at least half of the week, if not more. I also am going to go to Trader Joe's today just because I need some stuff like salad dressing and things like that I couldn't get at the farmer's market, but my goal is to try to just keep this like simplicity going in terms of cooking. I do want to learn how to cook more when it comes to being vegan, but in terms of like lunches and stuff like that, I think it's so easy to just like throw together a salad and then take some side veggies and hummus and some berries. That's been working really well for me, so I'm going to keep doing that. So yeah, I'm excited about this. And the other piece that I wanted to share with you guys was that I am almost done with the book that I've been reading, Contamination. And it's so interesting to look at all of the chemicals that we put into our food. And it's crazy because there's a whole section they talk about the process of chemicals getting built up in our tissue. And I feel like that's not a discussion that we have a lot in society, but it's such a like common sense thing of like your body literally has to rebuild itself and remake itself based off of what is going into it. And so any like component that you're putting into your body is becoming a part of your body. And that's true of what we feed our animals too, right? Like anything that they're eating, that's what they're growing off of, that's what they're building off of. Even if it's like an animal that is nursing, like they're getting their nutrients from whatever nutrients the mother's body is able to pull from the food that they're eating. And a lot of times in the meat industry, like to keep the cost of meat down, those animals are fed such terrible food. They're fed, I watched a documentary once that talked about these feed cattle that were fed leftover pieces of hay, which is, for those of you who didn't grow up in the country like me, the leftover hay, it tends to be like really like gritty and dirty. Like there's a significant portion of it that is just dirt because it's all the little pieces of hay that have fallen out of the bales that weren't big enough to get stuck into the twine when they package up the hay. And so you get, it's like full of dirt, and also it tends to be really, really rich because it's all of the like small leaves of hay that fall off of it. And so it's not very good for animals to eat, especially not when they're supposed to live off of that. But this farm that was raising these cattle, that's what they were using. They were using leftover hay, and they were near a Hershey's factory. And so Hershey's would send them over like these big troughs of chocolate pieces that are like when they make the M&Ms, and there's like little pieces of M&Ms that they can't put in the package because they're not a whole M&M. They would put those into these giant containers and sell it to this feedlot. And so that's what these cows were eating, was chocolate and dirt and like tiny pieces of grass. And I was just like, that like blew my mind. It was like, that is what our cows are eating. That's what they're having to build their bodies from. And then we're eating that and expecting to get nutrients from it. And I just I can't wrap my head around that. That doesn't make any sense. And then going back to the whole issue of pesticides and the chemicals that get put into things like that, there are so many synthetic chemicals that go into creating candies. Think about the color that candy is. That is not a natural color. And I'm not trying to hate on candy eaters. Like I was just talking about how much I love Skittles and how I'm trying to eat fruit instead of Skittles. But I think it's just like kind of out of sight, out of mind. Like we don't think about those chemicals being in that food, so it's easy to eat it. And then the more you kind of start to think about what those chemicals actually are and the effects that they may or may not have on your body, because that's one of the scariest pieces to me, is that there hasn't been a lot of research into a lot of these chemicals that we use, so we don't really know what the effects of them are. And that to me is almost scarier than being like, yes, we can say that this will give you cancer, and no, we know that this definitely will not, because if you haven't done the research, how do you know? Nobody knows. So my point is, the more of those chemicals that are being consumed by the food that you eat and being sprayed on the food that you eat, the more of that gets built up into our bodies because it gets caught in the tissue of what our bodies are building. So the chemical piece of all of that is definitely scary. But I also just think like that's a good point when it comes to nutrition as well. And I think that I've kind of gotten away from thinking of food as the thing that is actually like fueling my body and actually rebuilding my body. And I talked about this before of that when I was training for my first half marathon, I had also recently decided to go vegetarian, and I felt a lot healthier because I was thinking more consciously about what I was eating. And I just want to speak to the whole issue of protein really quickly. I'm going to just talk about it briefly because I feel like this topic has kind of been not over covered, but there's been a ton of research on this topic that by people who are more educated about it than I am. If you want to look that up, I can link to some resources below. But it's a question that I still get asked fairly regularly of like, how do you maintain any kind of running schedule when you're not eating meat? And like, how do you not run out of protein? And to be totally honest, I never had an issue with it. I just didn't. I think part of it is because I grew up with a parent who was vegetarian, so we ate a lot of like alternative foods that were high in protein, such as quinoa, or we'd have falafel sometimes, tofu, couscous, a lot of these just like whole grains that are really high in protein. And a lot of people don't even realize how much protein is held just in things like spinach. There's so much protein in spinach. And the other thing to think about is that when you're getting your protein from meat sources, that also comes with a pretty high concentration of fat. And that's just regardless of whether you're buying like fatty meat or like lean types of meat, like animals have a lot of fat in them. That's just the way that bodies work. And so all of those protein sources are are high in fat. So when your body is going to rebuild your muscles, yes, it definitely needs protein, but it actually can make it harder on your system sometimes when it's having to fight through all of those fat cells to get to the protein that it needs to rebuild your body. So again, I'm not saying that meat is bad. If you eat meat, more power to you. But I just think the more that I start to think through this process of like what is going into my body, the more I think about how scary it is that we don't know the effects of a lot of the chemicals that go into creating our food, whether that's the chemicals that's going into what we're feeding our animals or the chemicals that are going into what we're putting on our produce. B, I just feel like the more I've started to do some research into like spirituality and the way that like our thoughts affect our bodies, to go with the Pray video series when we start to talk more about spirituality and things like that. And the clinical research that there is behind how much our thoughts affect the level of toxins in our body is pretty crazy. And I have to think that if that is true of our bodies, it has to be true of animals' bodies as well. And so when I think about these animals that are being kept in these factories and they are literally like watching their fellow herd mates being slaughtered day in and day out, that has to be a pretty toxic environment to grow in. And I just can't imagine that that is producing like healthy things in their tissue that we then want to consume and put in our bodies, or at least in my body. I guess I can't speak to what everyone wants to feed themselves, but just speaking from a personal perspective, like the more that I learn about the industry and those things, the more afraid I am of putting that in my body. So I'm much less concerned about finding enough sources of protein than I am the ability to cut out some of these toxins from my life because they're everywhere. But I think shopping at the farmer's market is a good start. Part of it is just honestly like the transparency. Like when you go to a farmer's market, not everything is grown organically most of the time, but the people who own the farm or at least work on the farm are usually right there and you can just talk to them. And a lot of times they're really well educated on the stuff that they're putting on their food because it matters to them and because they're actually seeing the people face to face that they're feeding this food to, right? And I think that's a big disconnect that we miss when we buy produce from big box stores is that the people who are growing that food and producing it, they never have to look you in the eye. And I'm not saying that that makes them bad people by any means, but I think that connection is so important to be able to look at the person who has had their hands in making the food that you're then going to eat. I don't know. I just think that's cool. I think I feel extremely blessed to be able to have the ability to go to farmers markets to buy produce. I know that's not an option in every part of our country, but I'm all for farmers market. Spread the farmers market love. And then finally, kind of the last thought that I want to speak to is going back to the topic of protein and running. The biggest challenge that I had actually when I started running was that I had a problem feeling full at first, and it was funny because like everyone in the vegetarian camp was immediately like, well, what are you eating? Because there's obviously something missing. And then all of my friends who weren't vegetarian were like, oh, well, of course you don't feel full. You don't eat meat. Like, how could you feel full when you're working out and you're not eating meat and things like that? And with my vegetarian friends, when I started talking about what I was eating after runs, this is embarrassing to admit, but they were like so upset with me because what I would always crave after big long runs is like pasta. I always wanted pasta, or I wanted like French fries, or I want potato chips. I just wanted like those carbs that I could just consume in mass quantities really quickly. And so all of my friends who were runners, when I started to talk about that, whether they were vegetarian or not, they were like, Corey, what are you doing with your life? You cannot just eat empty carbs and expect your body to refuel off of that. Like, of course you feel hungry. And the thing is that I would feel satiated immediately after eating those huge carb quantities. I would feel really good, especially because I was still usually like on that endorphin high from that big long run, and I'd eat a giant bowl of pasta and just be like, yeah, I feel good. And then probably like an hour, maybe 2 hours later, I'd be like, man, I'm really hungry. And so at first I was like, well, man, maybe I can't be vegetarian and be a runner because I feel so hungry. And then all of my friends who are both vegetarians and vegans while also being runners or doing some other kind of strenuous exercise were like, you actually just need to eat real food and not french fries because no one can live off of french fries, even if they're not running and asking their body to do extreme amounts of activity. So that's my story. Learn from my lessons. If you want to be a runner, or if you are any type of athlete, or if you're just starting to get into fitness, if you're an athlete, I'm assuming that you've already learned the fact that you cannot use french fries as a recovery food. But if you're just getting into fitness or getting back into it or starting a journey where you're trying to be vegetarian or vegan while also doing strenuous exercise, don't default to those easy carbs. It's so easy to do because I get really bad cravings for those. I have a friend who gets really bad cravings for ice cream whenever she's done working out. There's just something about that, that is to her body like what she's craving. So she started drinking more like protein smoothies when she's done working out, and it's helped to curb those cravings. So a lot of times, like, I think that because we don't think about what we're putting into our bodies very often, like it's such an automated process in our society now. It's like we don't think about what it means when we crave things, right? Like we'll crave a particular thing like potato chips, and then we'll just go eat the potato chips. But a lot of times when you get cravings for stuff like that, it's your body is craving like an actual nutrient that it needs, but a lot of times it craves things like potato chips or ice cream or whatever because that's one of the only places where it feels like it's getting enough of those nutrients. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your body just like wants ice cream. It means that it wants some kind of nutrient that it either is getting from that unhealthy food and then not getting anything else that it needs, or it means that there's something in that food that is synthesizing the feeling of getting that nutrient. There's tons of charts online about like if you're craving this unhealthy food, it usually means that you're deficient in these things and this is what you should eat instead. I have one that is like this massive list that I found on Pinterest, so I'll link to it below so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the first Eat video. I'm really excited to chow down on all of this. I will let you know how it goes. As always, if you guys have recipe inspirations or if you have favorite vegan YouTubers, anything like that, please let me know in the comments below. I know a couple of people have given me awesome recommendations that I'm excited to speak about when we start to do the recipe videos, so stay tuned for that. We'll go more in depth with nutrition and cooking and all of that good stuff. But also, if you like doing grocery hauls and you like doing these types of videos, go ahead and click the thumbs up button so that I know, and subscribe to my channel. I'm having so much fun making these videos, so if you are enjoying watching them, let me know, subscribe. I love you guys. That's it.